an old soldier who refuses to fade away. This is the fourth video in a series that I intend to do, which will introduce the 192 campaigns fought by the United States Army since the beginning in 1775. Those campaigns are all presented as stories included in this book, A Battle History of Sacrifice and Courage, the sacrifice and courage of the American soldier. The last video ended up with my service in Vietnam. And in 1972, I returned to the United States and began a series of educational experiences. The first was to attend the Army's Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. And I then attended the Australian Army Staff College as an exchange student. The Army eventually sent me to graduate school, where I did a master's degree in international studies, which was useful for subsequent assignments. And in due course, I did the Army War College at Carlisle Barracks, Pennsylvania. My last infantry assignment was to command the 1st Battalion, 18th Infantry, which is a mechanized infantry outfit, part of the 1st Division at Fort Riley, Kansas. And when that assignment was complete, I went back to Southeast Asia. I did something of a professional switch. I was still in the Army, and I was wearing the Army uniform, but I was working for the Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA. It's DIA that manages military attachés, defense attachés, who work out of U.S. embassies. And I served a total of 10 years back in Southeast Asia, working out of embassies in the Philippines, Manila, the Philippines, Singapore, and Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Some of those assignments required a considerable amount of regional travel, and I was given the opportunity to sharpen my observation skills and do quite a bit of writing. And again, the writing was very useful as a reminder of the importance of being able to communicate effectively. At any rate, when my final attaché assignment was completed, I returned to the United States to retire at Fort Lewis, Washington. And that retirement ceremony was a difficult moment for me. I had started my career, my 32 years of active federal service, as an enlisted paratrooper private in the Army, and retiring as a colonel. And in fact, I'd been a colonel for the 10 years that I worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency. But my Army career was over, and I had to decide what I was then going to do. And what I decided to do was teach at the high school level. I had taught a bit at the Army Staff College over at Fort Leavenworth, and teaching seemed to me to be a good fit, and in fact it was. To teach in the high school level, of course, required state certification. And to do that, I had to take courses at Western Washington University in Bellingham, Washington, as I had settled nearby. I then taught at the high school level for almost 10 years. The program that I administered and that I supervised was a high school alternative program. It was an after-hours, off-campus program. The vast majority of the students in that program were bright, motivated, and they wanted to succeed. Many of them were working. These are kids who were required to work to make ends meet in their own lives. And a afternoon, evening program fit their needs. I also had a number of girls who were children with children. They no longer were interested in the social life associated with high school. Their primary task was as parents, and they too were able to put together a schedule that allowed them to complete their high school program. I also had a number of very, very bright students who had figured out that, in their view, high school curriculum was repetitious and time wasting, and they wanted to cut the corner and get on with their lives. And they were able to do that in a self-paced, individualized program such as the program that I was running. And my program grew. In fact, the last year that I was there, I had 80 students enrolled. I never had 80 students in the classroom at the same time. They came and went, depending on their schedule, not mine. I enjoyed that program because my students enjoyed success. Now, there were some evenings that were a little bit slow, and I began to think about my combat experience. You see, it had been some years since the Vietnam War. I could not, for the life of me, put together a good sequence of places and events concerning my 3 years serving with the 101st Airborne Division. We moved a lot. We were in a lot of different places, a lot of different actions, and I just could not put together a good chronology. But I was able to do that concerning the last year, that year that I served with the 5th Airborne Battalion. And the result of my effort there was a series of vignettes, 3, 4, 5 pages in length. I strung them together, sort of topically and in a chronology, and then I wrote an introduction and a conclusion, and I called it a book. In fact, the University of Alabama Press in Tuscaloosa published that book, and here's a copy of it. True Faith and Allegiance, an American Paratrooper in the 1972 Battle for An Loc. It's available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. And it's also available as an audio book. So anyway, completing that book and having it published gave me the encouragement to take on a much larger and a much more comprehensive program, which has now lasted for a total of 10 years. That is, putting together these campaign stories. Before I close up this video, I want to talk a little bit about some of my personal awards and decorations and other professional achievements. But first, I want to tell you that I have given a lot of thought to this, a long and hard thought. I normally don't talk about this particular subject. It's personal, and if I'm asked about it, I'm willing to discuss it, but I don't volunteer it. However, I'm going to in this particular case, because I think mentioning these items gives some credibility to my interest in telling these particular combat stories. And it gives some credibility to the way in which I selected research material and the way in which I put together and emphasized these stories with personal quotations and personal experiences from soldiers who were there involved in the combat. I am very honored to wear 2 awards of the Distinguished Service Cross. The DSC is a distinctive award, and I wear those awards with honor because in my mind, I am representing all the soldiers who were involved in those actions. A number of those men were killed. Others were badly wounded. And I have been given the opportunity to represent them. I also received a Silver Star 2 Bronze Stars with V device, which means valor. Other Bronze Stars can be awarded for meritorious service, non-combat service, but the 2 that I received are Valor Awards. A Purple Heart, and 6 Air Medals. Those Air Medals are the result of making numerous combat assaults, helicopter-borne combat assaults. As I mentioned previously, the Master Parachute Wings and the Ranger Tab. I also received a Pathfinder badge, having completed that course, and the Combat Infantryman's Badge, known as the CIB. CIB is a distinctive recognition of a infantry soldier's participation in combat. There are basically 2 requirements, being an infantryman and being shot at. And over the years that I spent in Vietnam, I have to say that I qualified for the CIB on a number of occasions if getting shot at is a key criterion. Writing these stories was a revelation for me, and it introduced me to a whole series of individuals who recorded their experiences, and it impressed me with the sincerity and with the honesty, the integrity, the devotion to duty, the commitment to the mission that they received. And I am honored to be able to put those stories together and to introduce them to the world. Now that that introduction is out of the way, I want to thank you for tuning in to these videos and to participating with me. I really encourage you to comment on the content of what I'm doing and the methodology that I'm employing. You might notice that what I'm doing is something like a home video. It's unprofessional. I understand that. I edit the transcripts, the videos, as best I can. If they're a little jumpy at times, well, shame on me. But I do want to complete this series, and the next video will focus on the introduction to the book, which tells the story of how the Army developed the campaign streamers themselves, which today identify the combat history of the United States Army. Until then, thank you for tuning in, and God bless America.